Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the leadership podcast called My Great Aunt EDNA. I'm your host, Mac McNeil, and today we have a special guest by the name of Trina Hill. Trina is an executive leader in technology, and she focused on transformational risk and strategy. And now she is taking that to the next level with executive coaching. And so with that, I want to introduce our guest and turn it over to Trina. Trina, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently thinking about now in your career perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I am a fan of yours in this podcast. I am Trina L. Hill. I'm the CEO and founder of TLHN Consulting Enterprises. I've been in technology for over 25 years, navigating Fortune 200 companies with the focus on transforming those organizations, whether it be the culture of the teams or the products that they deliver to the marketplace. Primarily in regulated environments, right? Love people. I know a lot of times when folks meet me, they think I'm in HR or marketing, but have a passion and a heart for people and leadership. I am excited to be here tonight to just share with you a little bit about, what we're doing from a leadership perspective in my company, and how executive coaching is no longer just something extra to have, but it is a necessary thing. It should be, you should always have an executive coach that's a part of your board of directors along the way. So thank you so much for having me, Mac.
Well, thank you. And that was a perfect transition when you talked about executive coaching being a necessity now. It's not an option. I know back in the day, it's like, hey, you're going to the next level of leadership, and here's an option for you to help you prepare. But now I think with so much going on in the world and the corporate environment and then external variables, like it's absolutely critical to have someone that you can reach out to and work with consistently. So, and I know you've been in technology and you've had, extensive experience in thinking about technology, but in leadership in general, with all the variables that are going on right now, and if I'm a new executive wanting to go to the next level, like how can you immediately impact or help me?
Yeah, so the first thing that we've got to do is talk about you, right? So what happens is as we are going through the ranks, and I understand it because I've gone through that process, right? You're so focused on showing up for your team and you're so focused on showing up and doing the quote unquote right things, but you really never take the time to assess where you are because you're going to go through a lot of change. The level of leadership and the way that you work before this promotion is going to be different, right? You will go from being the doer to be, I always say, from being the hands to being the head. And there is a transition in that process, right? And so what I like to do with my clients is spend some time on the front end talking about who you are, where you are, and what does success look like for you in this role. It's not just about the title. It is also about you, right? Because you're going to execute for the organization. They would have never put you in the role if that was not the case. But the question is, how do you define success for yourself? And what areas you may be struggling in that we can go ahead and get a plan together because you know where your strengths and weaknesses are. We're going to spend some time assessing that. And then let's put a plan together to set you up for success and help you along the way versus you burning and crashing. And then we have to spend double the time to get you fixed.
So you said a couple of things that I want to pull out of it. One, you were talking about strengths and weaknesses, and I was thinking about my own transition several years ago when I became a junior executive. I was really, really, really focused on the mission, of what needed to occur with the organization, my team, who I needed to upskill, from a technology standpoint, what tools do we need to support them? I didn't think about myself at all, right? So I love the fact that you said, you're going to start out with the individual, but I also know me as well. I don't really talk about my weaknesses much. You said I know my weaknesses. Yeah, that's true. I might know some of those, right? But I don't really talk about them. So how do you get someone to actually open up and talk about their weaknesses that maybe they're hiding from or they don't even want to talk about?
Creating a safe space. I think, as you think about rising up through the ranks, oftentimes the higher you get, the less you're willing to talk about those things because you are the leader. You must show up as being the leader who's perfect and will, be the calm in the storm. But I found with a lot of my clients, just even creating the space for you to talk about it and to give you time to process in a safe space is how I get you to that point. Because we all need help. None of us here are perfect. We're going to continue to evolve. But a lot of times we don't even take the time for ourselves just to sit and think about ourselves, to put ourselves in the employee seat. Because you know what your employees, you know what their strengths and weaknesses are. And if you're a good leader, you're constantly helping them, because either positioning them in places where they're going to be successful or helping them to refine those especially the strengths as well as those weaknesses they have. I force you to put yourself in that seat and give you the space to process through it.
Understanding my strengths and weaknesses from a career perspective or work or management perspective. But how else do you help me realize the other variables? Because there's several. In retrospect, I look back at like, wow, I really could have used this. And I don't want to, just tell your story, but how else would you help a young junior executive moving to the next level?
Yeah, so outside of us spending some time to do some identity work, right? I think the other part is you've got to understand the rules of engagement. At every level, even though it's the same game board, the rules of engagement is different. So let me give you an example. When you're lower level, if somebody invites you to go to dinner, in theory, you might could blow them off, right? You could make an excuse. The further up you go, it's expected for you to be there. Right. And not to just be there, but to be fully present there, having conversations and connecting with people. Right. You've got to understand at that level, how do you play the game at that level? And I know we don't like to say we don't like to play the game, but the reality is every job you're in is going to be part of a game. Right. There's rules of engagement. It's the way that the corporation operates everywhere. And so I want to spend some time with you, helping you understand, how does your organization work? What are those rules? How do you leverage those rules for your success as well as your team's success? Right. And forcing you to put those things that may be uncomfortable for you in action. So for instance, I had a client who wanted to, needed some additional resources. And he was like, well, my manager said we don't have a budget. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's what leaders tell you. They're going to always tell you that. But did you go pull a business case together and explain to them the risk that if you don't get this person, this head count filled, here's the impact, here's the financial impact, or here's the risk impact to the organization? Did you have that conversation? Well, no, I didn't know to do that. I said, I know. But your organization talks about risk all the time.
Yeah.
It's on their website. So leverage their language to get what you need in order to mitigate risk and to get the work done that you need on your team. So I work with folks to really look at who is your organization? What do they say they do? How do you leverage their language in order to get you what you need to be successful for your team?
That's good stuff. So I want to take it up now to the next level. We've been talking about junior executives new to role, but senior executives who've been an executive for a while, someone like me, you've been in the role for a while. You may be feeling stagnant. Is this the end for me? Thinking about what are the next stages in my career? All kinds of things. The demographic of the organization maybe has changed, where now there's a new generation who thinks differently, right? But how do you help senior executives that have been in that role for a while move or just, get passion again? People are, searching for that. Oh, I used to be really excited about this. So how do you as an executive coach help with that?
Yeah, we got to assess where you are and what do you want. So again, going back to success, right? I think, earlier in your career, they're thinking you need to continue to go up the ladder. That was kind of how people define success.
Right.
But once you're at that level, you have to figure out what brings you joy. What are you gifted to do? And are you in alignment with that? Because if you're doing what you've been called to do and what you're gifted to do, and you're getting paid for it, that's the sweet spot, right? Yeah. But if that's not where you are, then we have to figure out, well, where is that? Is that in your current organization, right? Is it outside the organization? Do you start a company on the side, right? Or do you go get a board seat? We need to figure out what's the desire of your heart in this season that's going to align with really those passions and the gifts that you have. So I do spend a good bit of time with leaders because, again, I think what happens is we spend so much energy going up the ladder.
Yes.
And then once you get up there, you're like, okay, well, now I'm bored, right? And the reality is the competition is different.
Yeah.
The top of that pyramid is smaller. So the pet projects and the extra projects or the switching your, job every 2 years, it doesn't happen that way.
Mhm.
And so I like to really get with my clients to talk to them about, again, what do they really want? And let's figure out, how do we position you to get that? And it may be inside your company or it may be outside your company. Because sometimes we stay too long. Sometimes it's time to go. And it's fine. But you need a plan before you decide to leave. So I will work with them on that as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I want to throw out a philosophy. This is one of my own personal philosophies. It's not written down anywhere, not anything that anybody uses that I know of anyway. But this is the way I think about the difference between coaching and management. I'm a sports nut. So everything in my world kind of circulates around sports. And when I played football, and I even coached for my kids when they were small, but coaching actually happens in practice. You get to do things in repetition. The coach actually gets to demonstrate. You get to watch someone else do it, and then you get to execute. And then there's some, feedback associated with it. But when I'm in a game, during the football game, my coach is no longer coaching. He's a manager at that point. He's managing the game, right? And so going back to the whole junior executive thought process, as a junior executive, they're being coached by an executive coach like yourself. How do you help them in the game? Like when they're active in the game, like what tools, could you prepare as an executive coach to make sure that they are operating properly during the game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have different tools for different types of people, right? But what I'll tell you, one of the things that I've seen is anxiety shows up heavy.
Yes.
You want to show up as a junior leader as being perfect. And so one of the tools that I use with my folks is really just simply for them to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody has to know you're breathing.
Yes.
Literally for you to just calm yourself and take three deep breaths in and three deep breaths out. And when I have them inhale in, I'm having them inhale what they want the outcome to be, or something good. Positive. Yeah. Right. So it might look like, I'm going to inhale that we're going to get this first down. Right. Yeah. And I'm going to exhale my frustration with number 7 because the last play he dropped the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Something as simple as that.
Ooh, that's
because
good.
What it does, it regulates and it helps change your mindset, because you're letting go of what you don't like, but you're putting in what you desire.
Yeah, definitely. That's good. So the listeners out there, whether you're watching here on video or you're listening right now, the level of impact that she just dropped, I don't know if you guys caught that, but that is major what she just dropped. Like breathing. Actually, I think you just gave them a free tool. We'll call that a freebie.
Yeah, that's a freebie.
Yeah, that's a freebie. Because I can recall, even going into senior executive roles, like if I'm new executive in a new company, new team, new meeting, don't know the flow and all of that stuff, but the importance of breathing. But the piece that you added that I thought was so impactful is like breathing in what you want the outcome to be. Like I've never thought of it in that capacity or that, that realm. That's pretty damn awesome. I like that. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. It sounds minor, but that's really important. All right, so I'm going to change gears a little bit here. So we're in 2025, this new year. We just had an election that was in the United States. If you're listening from around the world, we're in the United States, and we had an election like no other in the history of my lifetime, anyway, where it was extremely divisive, whatever, however you say that word. People lost relationships. Some people changed philosophies. And I have a term that I've tagged. It's called election PTSD. And in terms of leadership, I know that leaders need to be cognizant of this phenomenon because it's actual, it's real. And so in thinking about, and you don't have to give away all your nuggets, but in thinking about you coaching leaders that are either struggling with election PTSD themselves, or they have a team full of people that are struggling with that, like what are some of the things that you would help them with and moving along so that this or any organization is not stagnant now because of the results of this PTSD?
Yeah, and I love that term because I do think people are experiencing it, and it's coming out in different ways. There are some people that are very verbal, and there are some people that are going through depression right now. And I've had several conversations with folks. So as it relates to the leader, again, I think it's creating a safe space for them to even voice how they feel and let it be a safe space, right? So regardless of whether you voted for the upcoming incoming president or you did not, right? Or whether you voted for VP Harris or you did not, it's even just giving them a safe space where there is no judgment for them to communicate how they feel. Because they're still people. As a leader, you don't stop being a person just because you have a title, right? I don't know why we think that we become an avatar once we get into leadership, but we're not an avatar. We are actually human beings that have feelings, right? And so working with leaders is creating a space for them and helping them process through their emotions, but then also sharing a perspective to say, how do you lead people that don't believe what you believe or think the way you think?
Mm-hmm.
And really, Mag, the reality is that's good old fashioned leadership. I know we're the election is a big event, right? Same thing, folks are talking about DE&I, but at the end of the day, this is about good leadership, and good leaders understand where they are and process their own emotions and their feelings, and they understand their biases because we all have them, right? But then they help their teams and meet their teams where they are. And they respect, even if they don't agree, their team's positions on different things. And so for me, I think number one, leadership starts with the leader, understanding who you are, understanding why you feel the way you feel, and making sure you process those emotions so they don't show up on a call. Because sometimes it will if you don't process it in a safe space. And then as they look to their teams, making sure that their messaging, which I think is really clear, is that we are not going to always agree with things, but we're going to be respectful because leaders set the tone.
Yeah.
Right. And even if they decide not to share their political affiliations or how they feel, I think it's important for them to communicate that their team is safe, regardless of which side of the aisle they voted for. And that we are going to focus on being respectful and care about one another as people, regardless of what we believe. I think you have to message that. I think you have to show that. And I think you have to hold people accountable for that.
Really good. I'm going to throw in a twist.
Sure.
I like to do that. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, for those of you that don't know what it is, would you consider elation a form of PTSD?
Yeah.
Why?
Would you? No, would you?
Absolutely. That's why I asked the question. But because I think this is a piece that a lot of leaders that may be listening to this are not considering right now because, maybe they are on the side of the victor.
Yeah.
And out of that came true elation, which is another emotion. It's an effect of the stress that was just associated with the election. Mm-hmm. It's elation. But as a leader, how do you control that elation if your team, the majority of your team, is not experiencing the same thing?
Okay, so that's a great question. I'm going to share a situation briefly. Okay. So there's a Caucasian male who was elated about the incoming president, was very upfront, very open, very clear with his team prior to the election. And so, of course, the day after the election, everybody went back to work. And a good bit of his staff were for VP Harris. That's just the reality, right? African-American women, minority women, a lot of women on his team. He and I had a conversation at a very high level prior to the election results. And I said to him, you need to be thoughtful about the day after. Because if she wins, there's an impact. And if he wins, there's an impact. So how are you going to show up? And how are you going to give people space to process the space? He did listen to me, but they knew he was happy about the outcome. And he knew that they weren't happy about the outcome. Right. What he did that I thought was right, and he and I had conversations about it, is go ahead and express, you and I may not agree, but I still care about you. We may not agree, but I still care about you. And I think that's the key, right? Is you, quote unquote, you lost, I won, right? But the message is, I'm still your leader. We still have to work together, and I still care about you as a person. And although I may not understand your position, I still care about you. And because I care about you, I care about your position. And so he did create some spaces where they could have conversations when they were ready about their points of view around why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And he also had an opportunity to open up and talk about why he felt the way he felt. That didn't happen with his entire staff, but he did open the door.
That's
and
good.
So I think you've got to be thoughtful and mindful and careful when you are dealing with people, because it kind of feels like, nah. Now let's go back to work, right?
It can. Yes, absolutely. It can. Yeah.
It can be. But I think good leaders that, again, are self-aware and have some good coaches can help them prepare for conversations like that and make sure that they're doing whatever they need to do to make people feel safe. Because here's the reality. He's not going to get work done if his people don't trust him.
True.
That's just the reality.
Yes, right? It is. Yes, it is.
And you don't build trust if you don't feel like people will protect you, even if they don't agree with you.
Yes. Agreed. 100%. That's really good coaching that you provided. But I said that because I'm sure there were people that were listening like, I don't have any effects of PTSD. Yes, or my team is fine. They're good. They're just going to roll. But I think in leadership, and especially coaching other executives, it's good to talk about that and bring up exactly what those effects of the election can look like in leadership going forward. So I want to change gears here and talk about what you're doing now and what's upcoming for you. The plans you have in 2025, how people can reach out to you. What are some of the specials and things that you have going on so that they can, get with this executive coach genius of Trina Hill?
Yeah. So look, my heart's desire is that we really get back to what I call true leadership, where we really care about people. We're not caught up in the titles. And we, as leaders, I believe it's our responsibility to bring harmony back to the marketplace. And if we are in leadership positions, we have the ability to impact culture. And even if you can't impact your entire organization, if you're a leader of a team, you can impact your team, right? And so I believe that that's a part of our calling. If we've been given the opportunity to lead people and to shepherd people, it's our responsibility. And so my desire in 2025 is really to focus on leaders and helping them, number one, see who they are and make sure that they're not dealing with burnout, because as leaders, we will pour out and take care of everybody else, but we won't necessarily take care of ourselves. But also making sure that they are caring for their people the way their people want to be cared for. Right? Because you could, back to your football analogy, there are some people you need to yell at, and then there's some people that you can look at them and they will get it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We need to spend more time with our people, understanding who they are and what they need so that we can set them up for success beyond just them executing and getting the work done. Right. So my desire this year is really to spend a lot of time with leaders focusing on how do they elevate their leadership and empower their teams to lead as well? Because we're not going to always be there. We talked earlier about, well, what if I'm at this top level and I'm bored? Well, you should be developing your succession plan. You should be thinking about who's going to take your spot. And if you are in transition, you're working with those people to help them step up. Or if you want to go on vacation and not take your phone, which you shouldn't take your phone anyway, you should be preparing them for leadership where they don't have to depend completely on you. So what I'm working on this year is, continuing to develop, continuing to provide those services. I do have a special for your listeners. If they reach out to me on my website, which is trinalhill.com, and mention this podcast, I will give them 15% off on my coaching services for them for 2025. And then there's more to come, right? There are a couple of books that are in the works, so I'll have to share those with you, as well as possibly you've inspired me to consider doing a podcast as well, because I've been a fan for a long time of yours.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and you'd be great at it. You really would. Like, you're personable, and that's really the key to it, being personable. But you ask a lot of questions, very thoughtful. You'd be a great podcast host. Maybe I'll be a guest on your show one day, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
My next book drops, but no, this has been a great conversation. I know that you're going to be extremely successful. Leaders, if you're listening to me, trust me, reach out. It will be beneficial. Even if it's just for an initial conversation, just to understand like where you are and what you need to do. It will be worth your while and your time. If you're an executive leader and, you are bored, as I said, and I say that because I know a lot of them personally, and you are bored, you're listening to a leader right now that has experienced this before, that has come out on the good side of things. So I would also recommend it that you all connect with Trina Hill here. And so with that, Trina, any last words before we wrap up?
Listen, I think the thing that I will say is make sure you take care of yourself, right? We spend so much time making sure everybody else is good when we're in these leadership positions. You cannot lead from an empty cup. You should be leading from a position of overflow, and you should keep what's in your cup, and you should give people what's in your overflow. And so take care of yourself and live your life well. I know today in, the life, everybody's like, okay, we went from surviving to thriving. My desire is that we are not focused so much on thriving, but we focus on living well.
I like it. I like that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. So with that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in for this episode of My Great Aunt EDNA. Make sure you follow and subscribe to the channel. It's on all of the podcast networks across the world. You can reach me also at mygreatauntedna.com. And again, Trina's website was trinalhill.com. So make sure you guys reach out. We'll also put her information up on the screen. And with that, I want to say thank you. God bless you. And may your day and week be excellent.